difficult. There's
Include moment of spiking this.
in Copenhagen, Denmark.
120 world leaders cooped up inside one building. Negotiations continue with maximum chaos.
Mohamed Nasheed, the president of the Maldives. Do you see any signs of progress?
That big meeting going on in Copenhagen, if there's going to be a deal on how to save the planet, it's got to happen soon.
They're world leaders holding some closed-door talks, and they're really trying to work out some type of last-minute agreement, and it's proving to be a little bit more difficult. There's finger-pointing going around. There's talk about whether or not they're going to leave with anything concrete.
We deal with the systemic risk, which is what climate change poses to the world economy.
How much attention
The negotiators are still unable to come up with a text. So let's keep our fingers crossed we can still come out with a deal. Thank you.
How climate change is affecting your country?
Well, Maldives is just 1.5 meters above sea level. And because of climate change and sea level rise, the number of our islands are eroding. And it's not something in the future, it is something that we are facing right now. Thank you, I think I have to go. The Maldives is a stretch of 2,000 tiny islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It's a very low-lying country. We do not have even one hill. I've traveled the country up and down many, many times. Even if you live all your life here, you can't fail to be impressed. Historical evidence suggests that people were living here for thousands of years in equilibrium with the sea. But things are changing. The world is getting hotter. The sea level is rising. The ability to sustain human life here is very fragile. If we can't stop the seas rising, global warming will destroy the Maldives. As a president, it is very clear to me that the most important fight is the fight for our survival. Becho gotito. Assalamualaikum. Assalamualaikum. Kini. Mira ni gira tam badan bega de amada.
Kau baik berang kau. Berang berang. Berang.
एक जरो 50-70 वटी है 30 है बहुत नहीं है ना हां मैं गाय के हड़ारे मारगोना तड़ा नहीं निकाट देंगे तो In many eyes, the Maldives is a place to go on holiday. Where the very rich and famous come and relax. This is the height of the good life. It's, a cross between paradise and paradise. The beautiful ocean, the golden beaches, extremely high-class hotels and resorts. But most people don't know the history of the Maldives for the last 30 years. Ironically, it is exactly on these same beaches that most of the torture took place.
I've seen people hanging upside down with coconut honey thrown on them so that the ants come and eat them. I've seen people buried in the ground, and kept for days and days in rain and sun. I have seen it with my own eyes because I was there for 5 years. This is the truth of Gayoom's regime.
Gayoom ruled for 30 years. There was no opposition, there were no political parties, there was no freedom of expression, there was no freedom of assembly.
The island chiefs, they would insist that there isn't a single ballot which said no to Gayoom. And the man got, over 90%, 99% in most cases. And that's incredible. I mean, even God himself doesn't get 99% approval.
He was he was a mafia don. In the first 3 months of his presidency, he arrested more than 480 political prisoners. It was just crazy,
When we were growing up, the word for president was automatically Maumoon, and no one else, no question about it. We weren't taught about the past presidents. It was just Maumoon who brought the education, it was Maumoon who brought tourism into the country, and that's it.
I went to school in England. In '89, after graduation, I came back to the Maldives. By this time, the state had become more and more repressive. So we decided that it would be good to come up with a magazine.
Nasheed and I and few others began a publication called Sanggu, which was a political publication.
It was talking about two things, corruption and human rights abuse. It was very critical of the regime. One night, at about 3 in the morning, they came to my house. They raided my home and took a whole lot of papers.
They came and they took him away. It was in the middle of the night. I mean, we had heard so many stories of what they were doing in the jails and all that, so it was terrifying in a way, really.
I refused to give a confession. So because of this, I was taken to a corrugated iron sheet cell. The whole cell is 5 feet by 3 feet. You had a mat. That's all. You can still have a schedule for the day, even if you can't move. You could go for a walk. In your mind, you could be walking. If you can walk, if you're not chained, you take 4 or 5 steps in the cell, but you could do it millions of times. You take every second as it comes. I mean, 18 months was a fairly long time in solitary. When I was released, I was very politically motivated. So I dedicated my time in trying to introduce democracy, to bring people power. I wanted to form a political party.
With a child, I didn't like that at all. But I didn't have much choice. I could have left him, I guess, but he would still have done it.
In the last 20 years, I've been arrested 12 times. I've been tortured twice. My second child was born while I was in confinement. I was brought early in the morning to the hospital, and Laila had given birth the night before. I was shown Zaya just once. I picked her up, and then I was taken back again. In September 2003, a young boy was tortured and beaten to death in jail.
There had been rumors of people being murdered in jail for years. Normally they hush everything up, but this was unusual. The mother had been brave enough to insist that the son not be buried without everyone seeing him. So the body had been left in the cemetery for public viewing.
From his head to his toes, there wasn't any bit that wasn't damaged or bruised or... I mean, you could kill somebody, but here you could see that he was really tortured to death.
I've seen it many times, the beatings. I've felt the beatings many times. I know how you would feel when you have, when death is just right around the corner. When people saw what had happened to the body, that really triggered the democracy movement.
That was the turning point. That was the turning point.
There was rioting in the Maldives.
I received a call from a friend of mine in the Maldives. This person was sort of clearly running down the street. You could hear the thud of the footsteps over the phone. And he was like, I've just punched a National Security Service officer. People rampage through town, smashing anything that symbolizes state. So police cars were torched.
That's when the government had to announce a state of emergency and control that unrest.
We were scared. Tanks had been brought out. We were all wondering what more could happen.
I was very afraid for my life. After having understood what they've done to that boy, I knew that they must do the same to me. They must, if they were to survive and if they were to go on. So this time, as soon as I was released, I left. I went into exile.
President Gayoom has ruled almost unchallenged since 1978.
People that I've spoken to in the Maldives are frightened to talk to me openly.
It's not true.
But they are.
I assure you that's not true.
Well, you're telling me I'm lying.
I'm not saying you are lying, but you are not well informed.
We've been working abroad for quite some time by this time, but still it was possible for us to be very, very tightly organized. And therefore, we were able to exert a fair amount of pressure on the regime.
And then in the middle of all this, the tsunami hit.
In 2004, the tsunami destroyed much of the Maldives. Entire islands were abandoned. The tsunami brought a lot of climate issues home. It was a very strong reminder of the fragility of human life here.
The tsunami wiped out over 50% of GDP in an hour. So the regime really needed money. And the Europeans in particular sort of said, well, we'll give you $100 million, but it was linked to political reform.
Gayoom, he would only relent as much as he had to at any certain point, but never actually delivered any substantial change. We had set up the Maldivian Democratic Party abroad, but we have to move forward. There was no way that we could establish the party in the Maldives without me going there and taking the risks.
We had all thought it was a very bad mistake to come back, that he would be arrested right at the airport.
Amko erona utabe ne tirantam bai datam bai ehe kabara be adami bevne ma de haste bawara kiloma emme wara dakwar dehas novana hariyama wara modakan dekonoge ushre masari na duwahada sevenna nibene waruge datiko
The President of the Maldives has announced this week that his country plans to be the first in the world to go carbon neutral, meeting all of its energy requirements through renewable sources such as solar and wind power. It hopes to complete the transition within a decade.
Today, I can announce to you and the world that the Maldives will be the first carbon neutral country in the world. We hope to be, and we have planned to become carbon neutral in the next 10 years. And we feel that we can achieve this. Paul, what's the speech? What are we doing in England?
You're doing a keynote speech in Parliament, so that gives you a big degree of leeway to almost say whatever you want. You've got to play to what you feel natural doing. There's this photo in Sweden, and you stood on the lectern, kind of going like this, you know, and it was kind of having a conversation. So it's not this scripted speech, but it's sort of a series of anecdotes and points.
Fundamentally, our main point is we do not go according with the pack.
Yeah, and that's why
we talk about we talk about whatever has to be said.
Okay.
The other thing is we want to say if you can't defend the Maldives today, you can't defend England tomorrow.
Because if you can't save the Maldives, that means we've probably had about 2 degrees of global
domino
warming.
theory all over again.
Yeah.
It's the Vietnam, and please come and defend Vietnam.
Well, we won't put it quite like that, but I get your point.
But even if you don't put it, I'm going to say it.
Always makes me so nervous.
අවුන්ඩන කවස් තිවේ ෆුන්නමි බද්දල් කොල්දනි ගොඩන්නවානේ වීමින්වරකුන් අවුන් මි පදනි කොමෙ හුකුද්දු වහකු රේඩියෝ ගෙසරියායින් තිබේ ෆුන්නායකු කුඩ වගුත් කොලේ හේතු කොල්දෙවේතු ඊයක අලගොන්ඩ නූමතල ඔයි රිසෝට් එක හුළුමුගේ හෆ්නායක බෑරුම අවුන් මිකොළන් ආයරුග අහම මූසුම් වර ගදකොමති දැන් ඒරු අලගොන්ඩ අඩුයිරිගෙන් දිය බාරෂුග නගුරෝලි asking බාරෂුගේ ඊට ගේක ගෙල්ලු විදියම මේ ආමුකොම් අලගොන් මෙන්න කොම්මේ හර එහා ගිනාන් ඉවේ අඩෙන්නු අවගොන් මෙන් උමීද් කුරන් විභාතුගේ කංකම් අවගොන් මෙන්න අබදු දිමානුවේ නාන ගොතක කංකම් මෙදුරි වාහනකම අවගොන්ඩු මේදු නිම්මාදුම කුරීගා දන්නවාගෙන් බේනුම් මාදක අවගොන්ඩ බදම් තින්දුවහන් ඉංග්‍රේස්ලා මේ දතුරෙකි ඉංග්‍රේස්ලාතුගේ පාර්ලිමෙන්ට් ගාල්ගොන්ඩ තගරීර් කුරුම ලිබුන් ෆුර්සතෙගේ බේනුම් හුකුමට්ටක කුරා දතුරේ වල්හම්දුලිල්ලාහ් बड़ा शुक्रिया
If I was to summarize the state of the science, it would be that everything is worse than we originally thought. Sea level rise, way outside what the models projected. It's much, much higher. And this is the real key one here. These are global emissions. And the worst case scenario was this red line. And you can see 2005, 2006, 2007 are above the red line. So again, in terms of the drivers for climate change and sea level rise, we're way outside what anyone expected. And most of that's China and India. So all of this time that we spend talking and all of these meetings we have at Copenhagen and everywhere else, the temperature is rising. And I think people forget that. So the worst case scenario in sea levels, if you take into account ice sheets and how oceans behave and so on, is 2 meters by 2100. Can you deal with that?
The 2 meters we can't survive, no.
Right. And with carbon dioxide levels at current, 387 parts per million, eventually we'll see 25 meters of sea level rise. The only way to get the situation turned around is to get CO2 down again. We need to get back to 350 parts per million. So we've got to somehow remove the extra CO2 from the atmosphere.
You know, this is the problem. We need to start talking about the solution. How do we actually get carbon emissions down?
No, but it's not rocket science, is it? I mean, if you Maldives, you can do it in 10 years, 100%. Why is the rest of the world desperately trying to avoid doing 10% in, 30 years?
No, because many people in many governments wouldn't actually believe the science. They wouldn't believe this. They just simply, no. We need to just clear the table. None of it is working. India and Brazil, they're not agreeing to it.
So at Copenhagen, when the eyes of the world are on you, you've actually got to do something to really make that moment count.
So we need to get India, China and Brazil on our side.
And the US. Well, I mean, they're the key drivers of emissions that you can expect.
Indian politicians or Chinese or Brazilian politicians, they're not willing to stop opening up power plants. They like cutting ribbons. And politicians like that. And it's going to be very difficult asking them to stop that. But instead, if we ask them to cut more ribbons, green ribbons, and more of it, twice more, then it might work. Do you understand what I mean? Do you think it's workable?
Yeah, we just have to show them.
I will go with it to the Indian government.
And you can pick up the phone and speak to them?
Yes, we can pick up the phone and speak to them.
Go back.
Middle minute. All right. Maldives is a frontline state. If you thought defending Poland and defending Vietnam was important, defending the Maldives is very important. And when you have millions and billions of people in similar predicaments, just imagine the impact it would have on world order or security. We know that Maldives becoming carbon neutral is not going to stop us from annihilation. We know that. But at least we could die knowing that we've done the right thing.
keep stressing, they are a Yoti. If they are not China, they are a Yoti. You don't have to sort of, label this.
Good to see you. Good to see you again. Hi, Greg, how are you?
We're trying to see if we can qualify a few programs.
Yeah.
Climate change issue is very important, and also democracy. And we view climate change in the context of democracy.
Yeah.
Without democracy, you cannot adapt. The former dictatorship wasted $200 million because they gave the contracts to the wrong people. There were so many governance issues.
Yeah, I think in your peculiar circumstances where you've formed a democracy out of something less pleasant and you need a little bit of structural help,
Yes.
seems to me that we should be helping. Supporting democracy in an Islamic country, what's more important than that? I mean, that's a fair summary, isn't it?
It's a very, very fair summary. And also, we want to see if we can have a better relationship with one of the oppositions in some of the Arab countries and see if they want to learn or understand any of the things that we've been able to do.
You're very brave people, but then
We understand that we are very small and therefore it has its advantages.
Yeah.
It's difficult to bully us. You would be seen as a bully.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, have you seen today's Times?
No, let's have a look.
Headlines of it's the headlines are strong, but the content of the article's all right. This one down here.
about?
I mean, the war analogy kind of works. I mean,
That's a good one. I agree with that.
just yeah.
Can I ask how long you've been president?
Well, it's been 7 months now.
7 months in. You had a long struggle to get there. I think you said you'd spent some time in jail for your political beliefs. And now you're fighting climate change. You do like a battle, don't you?
Well, it won't be any good to have democracy if we don't have a country.
What do you think needs to come out of Copenhagen if there's any chance of your country's survival?
There has to be a deal that satisfies both the developed countries and the developing countries.
And your language is quite strong on this topic.
Well, it's a human right. I mean, come on, we cannot not talk about our existence as a country. We've been there for the last 3,000 years. We have a culture, we have a language, we have a civilization. But I feel that it can work. And so therefore, I am hopeful that at Copenhagen, there will be an understanding amicable for everyone. And if we can't come up with this understanding, then, God help us. Just in time. Daya! Hola. Henna. Maybe tell you what's going to happen. What happened? Mero ek kenre ke hada ko 10 ko dare bada komis me. Aron mamma gari ga hada na. Hello. Nice to meet you.
Thanks so much for participating in this. We're
Well,
really
it's a
excited to have
pleasure.
you.
Come on, meet him, Maya.
No, we'll stand right. So if we stop, the idea is to stand right here on the underside of that.
Inside the chair.
You've obviously done this before, Mr. President. Roll sound, roll camera, speed, marker, action.
If we do not act now,
When the camera stops moving, then you can start the line of dialogue. Ready? Hold on 1
we
second.
do not act now,
Okay, we need it quiet over there, please. Marker, action.
if you do not act now,
Could you just take a step this way, Mr. President?
Okay, people are almost clear.
Okay, turn over camera.
You okay?
Oh, yeah.
Wait 1 moment. Roll sound, marker.
If we do not act now, my island nation will be submerged by the rising sea.
And cut. Good one.
මෙහර මේ වායජිකි විහාර වරන් උදපුවේම මර ඒ අනුස් වාහනේන සම්පූර්ණ ඒරක මුයි හිපෙට්ටෙන් මජදියක තිබි එමි උඹේන උගන්නොත් නොහිතෙන නේද ආද ඔම්මිත් කොගෙන එම්ම කුඩු කොම්මේනේ එක ගොඩි එන්නු මා බුලාකු කුඩු පුට්ට කන්ත කුරම් බේන ද මිහාර වරද්දති මිහාර නුකරේනේ දිද්දුවා යවන්දුවා ඒගෙන් තනක කොමන්ඩුවා නුෆරා නුකරේනේ දෙන් කුඩු පුටි
President Nasheed, thank you very much for this. So this is your first trip to the U.S.?
Well, it is. I have come for a summit of the small island states and also for the United Nations General Assembly.
Sometimes in this whole climate change discussion, people find it difficult. You still must get people come up to you and say, Mr. President, it's a job killer if we try to limit the CO2 that goes into the atmosphere.
That's not true at all. It would create more jobs.
What is the plan if indeed we can't stop global warming?
If we can't stop global warming, it's adaptation. How do we adapt to the new reality? Concrete and embankment to protect these islands. But mind you, it's not just the Maldives. It's hundreds of millions of people. Ultimately, we are talking about New York. Manhattan is as low as Mali.
Ladies and gentlemen.
We have a God-given right to high carbon development, just as you've had in the US, and if we're going to give up this right, then you better pay us a lot of money. And what you said is we will give up this right to high carbon development because it's the right thing to do and because we believe in green growth. But that completely undercuts their position.
You sort of made quite a splash, pun unintended, when you had the world's first underwater cabinet meeting. In India, the consensus so far seems to be the onus is on the developed, industrialized part of the world to cut down on carbon emissions first. Do you share that as an emerging country, as a developing economy?
Gandhi once said, an eye for an eye will make the whole world go blind. And I don't think this is India saying this. We want to see India rise to the occasion and save the world. And I have no one else to turn to. And I don't believe that anyone else has the moral authority to do that. India has taken on the mighty British Empire empty-handed and have been able to win it, and with it, the freedom of the rest of the world.
The problem that we find, Excellency, in these negotiations is
that somehow or the other there is an impression created that we are the problem. Which is rather strange because our per capita emissions are very low. They are 1/20th that of the United States. So why should there be a focus on as if it is India which is standing in the way? India is not the problem.
You see, that is the problem. You're taking ownership of India. Now, the scientists that you're talking about, the West, who knows all this, they're all Indians.
We are not for a moment questioning their judgment. As I said, why don't you join hands together with us to deliver the kind of response that we need? But that response needs to be based on some principle of equity. You cannot say, I will stay where I am because I got here first, and you stay where you are because you are a latecomer. How can you sell it in your country? I cannot sell it in my country either. If we reduce our emissions from 1.1 ton per capita to 0.5 tons per capita, would the problem be solved?
We understand all what India is saying, but India needs to come out and becoming the champion. Yeah. What I sometimes feel is now, what kind of impact would that have on the United States government?
But look at the climate bill which is before the Senate. Would you, let us be honest, if you look at that bill, would you come to the conclusion that the United States believes that we are near the end of the world?
No, they don't.
So why is the end of the world only for us? It is the one world, so...
The thing is, you see, because they don't believe in the end of the world,
I should only control myself. I cannot control the United States. I cannot control Europe. I can only try and persuade. I cannot send an army to the United States and say, unless you do this or that, we will attack you or do that.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt this. We need to get him out as soon.
This is going to be a 5-minute interview live on the BBC World Service. I think just let's stay positive and just like yesterday, nice and slow.
Okay.
I'll just pass you over.
Hello, this is Aslam. Well, thank you.
Are you very angry?
Not really, not angry, but a bit frustrated.
What's gone wrong? I mean, we're only weeks away from the Copenhagen Environment Summit.
You asked me what's gone wrong, but what was ever right? I don't know what was ever right. We've been talking about this for the past decade, and nothing substantial has happened really. What we really don't want to happen is people going there and coming out and thinking, okay, we've achieved something, and in reality nothing has been achieved. Everybody is to lose with this. So I don't even like the term negotiation when we have to deal with climate change, because there is really nothing to negotiate with climate.
Minister, thank you for your time.
Raal jasaf itira annani enkaralaga pentila hisab ganu gam yar hama eggot kaspen beren kureve war wasse hudi hipaf
enuge kantadden argon me genguleng ege sarukarunga be gengule ege plan ni harterega maseketta argon me tanagane Paragana Veruga, in the Buddha, Cantata goes over Raruga Korea Lag in Pirin. And get up. Hello, very good, Kevin. How are you? Yes. Yeah. So I could really, talk to the Indian Prime Minister, and I'm fairly confident about India. But with China, they don't need an agreement. They don't need any of these things, actually. But we do, so they can't be spoiling for us. Okay, and please send me that text, and I'll see you on the 13th, or 14th rather. China में हूँ नहीं हो इतना एमिउना मोली दुनिया के एमे बड़ा दुंगार वामी मी हूँ ना गेलिंग अंगे चंगो चीकी है नो दा आहारों ना चल दिपुना नुदी ही पांटाने के नेतन
कौन सा का चाइना में बस
इंटरनेशनली मेजर कुरा कमी हूँ नहीं दे ये वहाँ के एमिउन बेनो बेनो वाले के इंटरनेशनल सोवरेंटी दूपन नहीं मिया मैं कम चाइना में बेनो बेनो वाले आइसोलेट पार्ट्स ऐसे पूरा मिल गया Me, I want to know where can you get to Copenhagen?
The Copenhagen G77 developing countries get standing ma boda developed countries get those Duvala Muling Huriak developed countries the Bakura. That is G77 position. I would make me solution never giving when they get developed countries, developing countries. I would make a positioning. I would make a positioning established Denmark that we are forced to contend with.
Denmark, me how going to invite Quranic. In a Norpana covering our own meta Batan. Furtaba who is in Etanuge, Copenhagen goes international Preska, Algon Mengosa, Figava, Gotakum, our Vihas, Avaka, Algon Benuman Bodu, a media event.
We'll hear from President Mohammed Nasheed in a few minutes. I'm told that he's on his way here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mohammed Nasheed, the President of
Thank you. 4 years ago, I sat in solitary confinement, but in spite of the odds, we refused to give up hope. We won our battle for democracy in the Maldives. A year later, there are those who tell us that solving climate change is impossible. Well, I am here to tell you that we refuse to give up hope. My message to you is continue the protest. Continue despite the odds, and eventually Together, we will reach that crucial number 350. 350. 350. 350. 350. And thank you.
What is your demand? What are you demanding here?
We want to survive, and we have to have an arrangement to survive.
Presidents, prime ministers, and leading activists are arriving in Copenhagen for a last-ditch attempt to cut carbon dioxide emissions. And with time running out, they remain deadlocked over money and gases.
China mihun itu kalau ada ni yang menaruh, dia malu minta ni, itu na draft nere. Nere for China miha kari komme sentence ko aha, kau bahaya kade ke masuk. Ah, bos ini itu na beru anding aha, vegetable ni no, fruit ya.
We put in the language peaking year of 2015, which is what we need to achieve 1.5 and 350. The 350 and that are really our two absolutely crucial points. And if you can,
we need to put that in.
Yes. So we've given them the language, so we're trying to make it easy and trying to be absolutely a cooperative party here where they can then use this as the negotiating text from now on.
Shall I put you around here and my team this way?
We need to have 350 somewhere in the draft document. But it is not there right now.
I think with 113 plus leaders coming, people don't want a failure. So something has to be pushed forward.
President Nasheed, we have hundreds of millions of Chinese viewers getting to know Maldives. But are you aware that there are people out there saying that global warming is a conspiracy and certain countries, particularly Maldives, is the #1 beneficiary?
Of course, there are people who doesn't believe that the world is round. There are people who still don't believe that man has landed on moon. So a few skeptics saying these things will not change the reality of any fact.
Don't you think at this very particular moment it is up for U.S. politicians and statesmen to decide and determine the final outcome of this conference? Because China has already committed.
What China has committed is not enough to save us. And we would want China to commit more. It's not only up to the U.S., it's up to the Chinese as much as the U.S. government.
Climate 工业化、城镇化快速发展的关键阶段，能源结构以煤为主，降低排放存在着特殊的困难。
Mr. President, I just want to thank you for what you're doing here.
Thank you so much.
And good luck.
Thank you.
So pleased you could do this.
Mr. President, your proposal on the table has been rebuffed by China and India, and scientists at the same time are saying it may already be impossible to keep global temperatures down to 1.5 degrees Celsius because of the carbon that's already in the atmosphere. So could it be counterproductive, this proposal on the table?
Well, it's politics, and we all of us have to be ready to negotiate.
There's a lot of discussion about what options are on the table if this conference doesn't achieve its goals and sea levels rise. What are the plans for the Maldives?
None. We will all die.
Very, very high.
What the hell? Conference of the parties of the conference. Conference.
1
2
The talks nearly did collapse over and over. There were attempts to change the text to reflect small island states' demands that temperature rises be capped at 1.5 degrees Celsius because the preferred 2 degrees would see them underwater. But China blocked the change.
We were hoping that tonight would be a very happy evening. I don't now see that.
The 2050 number. The 2050 number is here. There's 2050 number.
So the text is, I think, okay. And it's just that no one agrees on the text.
No, I think there's a broad agreement among the group now, I think.
Right. But there's no agreement with China, so I think we'll have to sign this without China.
But the Chinese will not let themselves be isolated, right? They'll have to
No,
do something.
they will try to get a block of G77 with them.
You know, the whole world thinks that America's blocking this.
Yeah, but no.
These press is idiots. They've got this 20-year-old sort of post-colonial mentality.
India's really funny, you know, it's moving from here to here, and it has no central
will
position.
eventually be
It's
on
hiding
the
behind
right
China.
side.
Isn't India hiding behind China? They're going to do the talk.
Well, I think initially the idea in India was to be a Canada, to completely hide from everything
But
and
they
just...
couldn't. They couldn't.
Oh, my goodness.
No, but I think most people would sign. Bangladesh would sign.
They would. So India's the key one then. Does India go with China or does India go with everyone else?
India goes with Maldives, Bangladesh, Nepal and Bhutan.
Really?
Yeah.
You know, about half an hour ago we were told there was no deal. I thought that came from you. It did. And then everything's turned around.
It turns around in every 10 minutes.
In a heartbeat. I thought it was just us outside, but it turns out it's inside the room as well.
We are now resuming the 12th meeting of the CMP.
Point of order, Mr. President. There is simply no consensus about this document. We're not going to recognize it. We don't want to discuss it. Thank you.
Mr. Prime Minister, this document is one of the most disturbing developments in the history of the UNFCCC. We do ask you to withdraw this document.
Mr. Chairman, this is just one instance when Maldives is asking our friends, our developing country friends, to help us. Please accept this decision and please keep this document alive. We need this document for us to go on. There are many countries who need this document. It has many lifelines. And please, I would like to make this plea from the bottom of my heart to my fellow friends from the developing countries to accept this document and to adopt this decision. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, I just want you to know that Australia will keep trying. We are not going to ignore the pleas of the President of the Maldives. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, as the Prime Minister of Maldives has said, I think an action postponed is not in the interest of people who will be affected by climate change. So we fully back the document that is behind us.
On the basis of extensive consultations with parties, I will read out to you a draft decision. The Conference of the Parties decides to take note of the Copenhagen Accord of the 18th of December 2009. I hear no objections, so decided.
There was high drama in Copenhagen today, where at the 11th hour, an agreement on global warming was hammered out.
The
as it
deal
calls
done
for a
among
reduction in
25
greenhouse
rich and
gas
poor nations, pledging to work together to fight
Working
climate
despite
change.
setbacks, world leaders reach an agreement on climate change.
The agreement calls for a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by all nations. Calls for a reduction, but doesn't require a reduction.
And my good friend Mohammed Nasheed is actually the hero of tonight.
I can tell you this truly because people was blocking that. And then Mohammed Nasheed made a very, very strong intervention. And at the very end, we were successful.
I don't think there's anyone's making any pretenses about this. But this has all been done to try and salvage some kind of climate, some kind of climate regime out of this whole process. The Chinese wanted to leave here with nothing, and they very nearly got there. But the point of this is that we've still got some process alive, and there were parties in that room who didn't want that to happen, and you know who they are.
I understand that this is not the complete binding document, but it has features that it can migrate to become a very good planet-saving document. Mama Arabi Varabod come me con in Malavani me then my agreement me libuni hama. Mita Huri Dunia Mihar Dakan. Ah, that was Nurita maybe. Come da. Molin da Kama, a ticket the magazine. I'm very hard for a deal in Copenhagen. But in hindsight, coming back to the Maldives, you realize how impossible the whole thing is. We're having to spend less on healthcare, less on education, and then use that money on concrete and on seawalls. Good morning. But we try to bring change, we try to make a difference.
My generation will live on to die on these islands. To see that my grandfather lies peacefully is a wonderful feeling. I definitely don't want to see his grave being washed away. This is us being humans. We have a connection to the past, and we have a hope for the future. I don't want my children to lose that.
I really fear for my children's future. I sometimes wish I had not had children, that this is a world not fit to bring them into, really. I'm much more of a pessimist than my husband. He always finds a positive angle to everything, always.
We had to bring democracy to the Maldives because I didn't want my children to be in solitary confinement. Neither should they have to be environment refugees. We just can't disappear. We just can't. We have to survive, and we have to do whatever it takes